My question basically, it is important because we are very creative in Moscow and in Russia in general, and Kazan is, I think, one of the most creative cities I ever met. And but this creativity is not known worldwide sometimes, or the target audience is like investment community. Sometimes they don't realize how big and huge potential of Russian cities are.
You have to have a realistic idea of to whom you can be known, or to whom you're relevant. I mean, I'm not. It's okay maybe just to be known for something in Russia. I don't think it's a tragedy that certain cities are not internationally famous. Also, I was just talking to Sergey before the talk. We used to work together in Scandinavia, and I was saying that one of the biggest things about a city, the kind of dirty little secret of city branding and marketing and promotion, is that the most important factor about a city is what country it's in. And the biggest difference between Helsinki and Stockholm, which are very different cities, lots of different things you can say about them, is that one is Finnish and one is Swedish. Mm-hmm. And the national context sets the legal framework that operates in the city. It puts a kind of upper limit on how, no city is a bigger deal than the country is, which is of course a paradox because cities are more important than countries.
I'll make resume in Russian if
navigating. I'll just interrupt myself. So I think navigating a lot of these paradoxes and seeing which side of the yin and yang you have the best opportunity to play with is part of doing something right. Figuring out which rules apply to you and which you can break, knowing the rules before you break them, like you said.
Right. То есть мы говорим о том.
We are speaking about that the brand is determined by the country, and it is difficult for the cities sometimes to promote themselves. And we will be talking about Kazan, and it's a unique. They have a unique competitive advantage, and we need to inform the audience about these competitive advantages. If the country brand is strong and too powerful, sometimes it subdues the city's brand. I'm just summarizing what you've said. And I want to draw Sergey Mitrofanov back to our discussion. And we can talk about investment community. I don't know whether you have a presentation or not. And something is shown on a screen, and it's extremely important that many of the cities within the 5 years, maybe 10 years, the world kind of switched from the regional branding but to the national branding. It is for the megacity, it's a challenge. And promotion is happening in two areas: investment and many countries, for instance, Tokyo or Japan, they promote only the tourist potential due to positive image creation. And the investors are starting to invest due to this positive image. But in Russia, do we have any successful examples of successful brands of the cities in Russia? You interrupted our discussion with Natalia, actually, and sometimes I tend to interrupt people. And the examples of the investment branding, we have two examples, two success stories, successful investment stories. Moscow and Moscow region, I keep them together. I believe from the brand perspective, they live together, and Tatarstan. One time I represented Tatarstan abroad from the investment raising perspective. Natalia will tell you more. And in fact, we need to remember that, Jeremy, you kind of started talking about the digital epoch, digital era. It changes the attitude to investments. Currently, what we mean by investments, we understand humans, creation environment for humans. If we look at the industrial production, if we match it against 10 years years ago. And currently we create less jobs than previously due to automation and due to new techniques. And offices will create fewer jobs in nearest future as well. And half of the population need to be self-employed. This is the expectation. So investment attitude is different. We need to create jobs where it is either convenient to work for the local community or to cooperate with our clients. This is the paradigm that changes the attitude, the sentiment towards the cities. Jeremy, you mentioned Finland and Sweden, and this is the more or less mono countries. If we take a look at Russia, and we have Tatarstan and Kazan attractiveness. In Tatarstan, they have multiple investment clusters. And we can speak of the entire republic. This is a specificity. I lived for some time in Kazan. I'm a partner of one of the companies, one of the facilities in Kazan, and I closely cooperated with the businessmen, with the city, local administration, and what are the benefits? And I'm speaking about two big cases, and you might ask, where is Kaluga? Where is our favorite Kaluga? Kaluga is a nice example, just like the St. Petersburg. This is one-time peak. So far, this is not systemic. The success story is not systemic. And St. Petersburg, I was born in St. Petersburg, and I'm very disappointed in St. Petersburg. They fail to utilize the potential that they have. And tourists, they do have tourists. They are flooded with tourists. But apart from tourism, this is a scientific center. I would not say this is an industrial center, and it can compete with Kazan in scientific regard. But now they are lagging behind. And you just said it's a joke. St. Petersburg can compete with Kazan, but this is not a joke. This is my feeling. I walked in Tomsk, and I can see that Tomsk, it lost its place due to railway going through Novosibirsk. And this is a historic fact. It happened 100 years ago. So this is a young city that is trying to prove that there is a life in the center of Siberia. Tomsk is an example of successful branding in Russia. Tomsk earns money due to tourism, not the glory, but the money. In case of St. Petersburg, once we count tourists, but in Tomsk, they calculate money. If you come to Tomsk and you sleep there, you have food there, and you buy souvenirs, but once you come to Tomsk, you pay for training. This is another level of money. And to be honest, we are talking about success stories, but among the branding consultants community, we have stories going on. There is a lot of buzz about small cities, megapolises. Megacities, they live different life versus to what the small cities do. And megacities, they are so versatile. And once I mentioned that Moscow, it gradually is trying to join the Global Cities Club, to join this club, but they're very similar in terms of life dynamics, in terms of number of population inhabitants, like over 10 million, like Los Angeles, LA, London, Shanghai. This is the club where 24 by 7 they are active, but we have to speak about Moscow. And unfortunately, with regards to the mid-Russia cities, the Ural cities, is it possible that we just don't know a lot about other cities? We don't know negative things about them. We don't know that in such and such city a project failed. But the same way we don't know about success that might have happened in the cities. Volga, Chelyabinsk is developing quickly. They are starting to get develop. These are the opportunities. They will have skilled workers. So far the investor is the state. And we have one single investor, Russian government, state. And the Russian cities, they're competing for his or her attention. And so we have a competition fighting at the market for these investments. You just said we need to know how to speak in a correct way, and it's not enough. We need to do. To speak is not enough. We need to systemically prove by our deeds. This is what ensures the success of the brand in the investment activity, in any activity that the city wants to present to other neighbors. I fully agree with you. We need to breathe in and breathe out, otherwise we cannot live. Natalia, we started talking with you on Tatarstan, on Kazan. On Kazan, please. We're talking about megacities, and Kazan and Tatarstan. And it's basically the same thing to us in our perception. Lots of projects are going on in Tatarstan sometimes. It's difficult to position them because Kazan brand 2013, this is the project from Tatarstan. What's your take on that? What is your perspective? How do you position these projects? How do you promote them? And how you disseminate them beyond your borders? First of all, everything is so good. I just came here, and you are talking about Tatarstan without me. The same thing happened in St. Petersburg Economic Forum. This is the result of our success. This is undeniable. Just a couple of points. I disagree with your stance you begin with. And you said it's difficult to communicate beyond, but if you put everybody together inside, I am against this stance. In my experience, it is difficult to communicate inside versus outside because you have much more commitments. Can we say that it applies only Tatarstan? We can put together anybody, but we have one common issue. In Tatarstan, it's difficult to put people together, but it's not difficult to put everybody together, but to persuade is the challenge for you, for Tatarstan, in Russia today, I believe. This is very relevant. Ilya Krasilchikov, and he recently described why the people want to revise their cities. They are not fools. They know how to communicate strategically, but we don't have any functional channels to communicate. What do you mean by channels? Where? In principle, in Russia we have a media crisis. We don't have communication channels. You know, I'm dividing. Russia, mass media in the region and beyond Russia. I'm talking Russia. Another point, maybe you don't have an interesting content, I will tell you more on the content. And it is good that we got together and we're talking here. It's difficult to speak on behalf of entire Tatarstan because I have my responsibility area. I'm developing urban areas and the public spaces. Last year we arranged 140 parks. This year we will create 70 more parks, and 21 of them is a waterfront. And these are social projects. Is it a branding? Is it economics? This is a social project. You come to a residential settlement, 7,000 people live there, and all of a sudden you create something in terms of amenity which is at the same level as in Kazan. You come to a village bordering with Bashkiria, and all of a sudden you can find the street the same quality of Switzerland and Germany. Of course. This is the policies that are in place in Tatarstan. I want to apologize. Let me finish. And what needs to be done? We have a place marketing and place making. These are two different stories. We can raise investments, and you can do, and then later on it will communicate by itself. We are coming gradually to such a situation. We allocate the places, the sites that we believe they are attractive from investment perspective, and we improve amenities. If we believe Nizhny has economic potential, let's invest more funds there. And we need to give to everyone, because the standard of living for the one that lives in Kazan can be applicable across the entire republic, and quality of Kazan lifestyle. And I moved from Moscow to Kazan, and I'm not deprived in anything, even moving from Moscow to Kazan. Yuri, what is your perspective? What is your take on that? On the one hand, you don't have a task to do branding for the megacity. You have lots on your plate. What would be your advice to the brand managers? How mass media can be used for this branding purpose? And the methodology comment, first of all. Perhaps this is obvious, but I want to speak once again. Speaking about branding, as in the entire urban science, we don't have a silver bullet, we don't have a universal solution. There is no textbook containing this universal solution that can be applicable to different spaces under different circumstances and environments. And for Pyongyang and Seoul, do we need to develop a brand via one single methodology? Is it doable or not? Pyongyang, all the problems are solved and people are not leaving, not abandoning the city. Branding is not needed in Pyongyang. And as far as media, mass media is concerned, here we don't have a universal solution either. How to use this mass media? Over the course of 15 or 20 years, been a part of mass media, and we lived through different times, and today's media-related crisis is derived from the fact that we still apply the words to use mass media or disseminate information to the audience. We still use this vocabulary, and mass media is not an equal partner. This is not an important institution for the community, and these are not the people who ask questions from the public. This is just a window shop where we need to download a certain volume of information, and then the people are obligated to passively perceive it. And so here the crisis of confidence is coming from, and this year in Moscow we are encountering this crisis of confidence. We feel it on our shoes, literally. And why city mass media are not coming into picture? I really love Tatarstan, and there is a Kazan TV broadcasting channel, and also they have the same broadband as Zvezda, another federal broadcasting channel, and I'm happy. Kazan broadcasting channel and Moscow 24 channel and Podmoskovia Moscow region, they are not as successful as Kazan TV studio, even though they are still professionals, because in Kazan they apply a different approach. As far as using mass media is concerned, I believe the people who are working on the brand creation, they need to be able to see from the outside on the established situation and to be able to find the unique benefits, advantages that you can communicate through mass media, not to make it up, but somehow persuade people, to make people falling in love with them. And Moscow Cultural Department was an expert on doing it in its previous composition membership. And around any transformations, around any activity, immediately they had such a beautiful legend, and you just have to fall in love.
At least for the part of the audience and media who are ready to buy this legend, I would like to ask you a question, if you allow me. Since I'm part of this historical phenomenon, I would like to ask you the following question. If we talk about the Moscow Department of Culture, there was some kind of media which was loyal and to which audience trusted, and when the right kind of communication went through this media, there was some critical mass appearing, and then this information went further. But what do we do in a situation when the media, which was strong with that audience earlier, is no longer strong, and today it's not possible to repeat this because the same media is no longer relevant? Yes, it's impossible because that was a myth around which those media were built and which provided the energy for their audience. And then it disappeared. When I talk about the past 20 years, in Moscow, there were a few influential city media which created a different image of the city, a different dream about the city. And this resulted in a comprehensive understanding of why to live in the city, how to spend money here, why come here. Can I specify one thing a bit? Let me do this. There was the newspaper Exile, which everyone liked, which created a great image of Moscow in the 1990s as a place where there is a lot of easy money and easy sex. That was a kind of a place where the politically correct American could make his fantasies come true. And that was a Moscow-published newspaper done by Americans in English. And there was also the Village newspaper in the year 2010, which looked upon Moscow completely different. In the year 2010, it was impossible to sell the myth of the 1990s. It was another generation of people, and this influential edition of 2010 said that they had several principles that made living in Moscow comfortable. But as soon as this is becoming implemented, we are starting to support it. And we keep supporting what we had when we were young, when we were teenagers, whether they are bikes or hamburgers. Please get your questions ready. But the question I asked was as follows. If we are brand managers, what can help us? Just look at the media. My advice is the following. Please watch the media. If the media do not pay attention to you, that's a disaster. And there have been a lot of negative examples in Russia. For example, sometimes some advantages were only laid forward by the Russian media after the Korean media, for example. Or in Nizhny Novgorod, when it went to a presentation in the United States, the governor was invited to the federal TV channels only after there were some publications in America about Nizhny Novgorod. So we don't have to focus only on a local media. May I interrupt you, please, as a journalist? I think we have a certain feeling when we talk about investment, we talk about foreign investment. Is that right? That's what I noticed. Some people in Russia talk only about foreign investment, or primarily about foreign investment, because I haven't seen very often any PR for medium-sized local business. Yes, but actually we have a lot of investment projects made in Russian. Yes, well, they are placed on the websites, but maybe no one reads them. Russia is in fact really diverse, and to support Natalia, I will say that every region is different. Bashkortostan cannot boast of the same of which Bashkortostan can boast, but because people live very differently, work very differently. Are there any questions from the audience, please? No mic, please. The question cannot be interpreted because it's not being asked in the mic. Can I answer that briefly? So, legacy is your content. To speak briefly, different branding of different cities is limited by tourism, but there is also culture, legacy, and there is export. Well, thank you for a good question, but I don't want St. Petersburg to be turned into a city of stones, as I say. If you look at St. Petersburg in Google or in Yandex, there are just beautiful places there, but there are no people there. And there should be people who need to have a rest, who need to relax, and we need to either keep money in or keep people in. All the rest is some content and infrastructure which helps a person to develop. History and legacy are different things. You can create beautiful content, you can attract tourists, you can make a great history, but this is about content. And you are forgetting about internal communications. You haven't named them either. And by the way, you shouldn't be afraid that your history is your content, that your cultural legacy is your content, because you can work with it very well. People worked with Macedonia, for example, and some information was published on the internet where people took photos against the background of historical places, and that was the backstage for their vacation. And like how Stockholm is positioning itself, Stockholm is a city of talent. Many European cities are focusing, first of all, not on multi-age history, but on the fact that there are still people there who find their future. In big cities, people should find their future. Then they will live there, they will develop there, and there will be investment. That's about content. We can discuss this issue after the session, but we are talking about the branding of an image, of a bright, vivid, and vibrant image of the city. The more vibrant it is, the better people will remember it, and then investment will come, people will come. If someone wants to have their last word at this session, please speak up, because we have to wrap it up now.
Stuff is still new. I mean, there's nobody alive today, no adult who's alive today who's had Facebook his entire life because it didn't exist. Or Twitter. We're still getting used to this. We still haven't figured out how to integrate real life with fiction. And we're going through a phase now where there's this tyranny of click-throughs and image views, page views. And that's what seems to matter. And the effect of that is that every place, every city feels like they need to be famous. They have this urge, this panic that they need to be like the Kim Kardashian of cities or something, which just isn't authentic for most places. I don't know much about Kim Kardashian. Maybe she's talented, but she's not famous for being talented. just maybe talented at being famous. So I think one of the big things cities need to do is be authentic for themselves, because for the people who live there, it's the most famous and important city in their lives, in their world, and that's what has to be kept in mind above all.
All right, thank you. Тогда что же? Тогда я благодарю всех за... У меня...
Thank you. I have a small clip. I believe that not everyone is here in Moscow, and we are talking about a short message. I would just like to give you the example of 2011, when Moscow was promoting itself on international TV. And there's a small video clip. Please turn it on. If we can't run it, then we will watch it the next time. It's important to switch the sound on. Well, there is music here, there is sound. That's the beginning. I will just say a couple of words instead. You can see how it was filmed, but it is clear that in 2016 this image does not work any longer. Because if we talk about external public, then the image of Moscow as a capital which is very dangerous, the capital of a very dangerous country which is ready to bomb people, this image has become so strong now that it's impossible to gloss it over with some glossy images. And that's also for internal consumption as well. I can't say that this is bad. There is some strength, some passion and interest behind. But right now, it's much stronger than any other decision that might be offered. So this is an image which created itself. And what does the brand manager of a city have to do? Does he just have to sit and wait? Or just say, well, that's the image that exists, so we will just break for lunch now? Well, Marina Zakharova in 2016 did everything right, according to the logic that existed. We just need to do what Maria Zakharova did. That's make fun, make jokes, say that we are stronger than anyone. If you like to play by those rules, then welcome. I think that a great example of branding was seen this year. That's those fences which have become a new face of Moscow. That was a decision of genius. I don't know who invented it, but it was great. There were those bars, those police fences as a symbol of everything. I think it was a great work, a great job. But if we don't have such Maria Zakharova in other cities, we don't know what to do in other cities. Do we need to attract investors? Well, there's an important point. One person who invented the concept of the creative class said, creative class made the standard of living in cities go up, and as a result, many young people who do not have rich parents cannot afford to buy a flat in those big cities, a flat, a car, or anything else. So what happens in cities with 1 million or 3 million of people? There is an opportunity which is as follows. Now those cities can start to develop because the biggest cities will start to stagnate. Well, we don't have the problems with logistics now, but there is just one flight from St. Petersburg to your city. There is one important point here. If you want to get some recipe from Tatarstan, that's a very simple story. Please take a certain number of steps. If you decided that you are going to attract investment, then, for example, our president created an agency which invited investors, and everyone had to be polite with those investors. No one could actually send them to the dogs. And this agency actually helps investors a great deal, and that provides a greater effect than just making presentations. Well, an investor comes to Tatarstan, someone grabs him by the hand and walks him around, but it's important that people do come. Actually, I can say that Tatarstan's success is not only about active walking in Russia, but it also has direct connections with Singapore, with Ireland, with Dubai, with the Silicon Valley. Few regions can boast direct links, direct communications with abroad. And it's not about logistics, it's about direct connections between heads of regions. Secondly, we have a brand which exists for about 15 or 20 years. 10 years ago, we had the first Tatarstan exhibition, and we are only seeing the first results. It might be quicker, but nevertheless, it's still about continuity. And that's very important in Russia for many regional teams. We need to continue. We need to take what was done by the previous team and keep it on, keep it up. We were suggested to leave this room and discuss things beyond it, because we need to wrap up our discussion now. I wish you all the best, many big and little successes.